I think one of the best things that people can do is maintain healthy insulin sensitivity, because insulin resistance is often driving the fire, it's the fuels the fire that's causing these diseases of aging pathic. Testosterone is often the hormone that brings people into this. It's like the gateway drug of HRT. But testosterone is very important for men. You know, it's a sexy molecule. Fear is a very effective way to get someone to do something. It hijacks the brain, it activates the amygdala, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. I think it's about not being insulin resistant and then having optimal hormones to offset the effects of stress. I think that's a good foundation to start with. I'm sure everyone will speak on, some different things that can be done. But I think that's the most important foundation to get all of this to work. Obviously there's what you do with, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years. It's about the day-to-day eating, the exercise, all of that kind of stuff goes without saying, because you can't out biohack, a bad diet. But I think on top of that, one of the most interesting areas to look at is optimizing all your hormones and then making sure you don't have this underlying systemic inflammation, which would prevent those hormones from working properly. And what we're doing with optimizing all hormones to the body, so when I say all hormones to the man, I'm talking about things like testosterone, but also things like pregnenolone, DHEA, thyroid, melatonin, growth hormone altogether. Creating this optimal hormone environment, what these all do in synergy is they pull the marionette strings at the top of the systems in the body in terms of impacting how everything's going to regulate downstream. And one of the most important roles of all of these hormones, if we're kind of thinking about a Venn diagram, where all the circles cross over in the center, one thing that they all do that's really important is they offset the effects of cortisol and stress, and they're anti-catabolic. So this is essentially preventing what's driving the underlying diseases of aging, which is chronic inflammation and catabolism, where the body will start to break down and age, literally what it's doing, rather than heal and thrive and regenerate. So I think one of the best things that people can do is maintain healthy insulin sensitivity, because insulin resistance is often driving the fire, it's the fuels the fire that's causing these diseases of aging pathic. And then as we get older, maintaining the body's resilience to remaining robust, to remaining healthy, which is having optimal levels of all of these hormones. And I think that testosterone is often the hormone that brings people into this. It's like the gateway drug of HRT. But testosterone is very important for men. It's a sexy molecule, speaking of sexy loop. Sexy molecule, it's something that works extremely well in a man's body to maintain his life force. But when we're looking at these other hormones, things like thyroid, pregnenolone, DHEA, melatonin especially, what these are doing is reducing a whole lot of the inflammatory systems in the body and allowing the body to be in a state where it's more able to regenerate and thrive and ultimately allow people to have the healthiest immune systems, the healthiest bone mineral density, the greatest ability to synthesize protein and build muscle, and all of these factors to prevent neurodegeneration, cancer, cardiovascular disease is from having these optimal hormone levels. So the older you are, especially if you're deficient in testosterone, the more likely it's going to be that the other hormones are going to start to decline as well. So it's very important that we're not just looking at one hormone, but we're looking at the entire cascade, and then how the hormones are supportive and facilitated through a healthy body underpinned by diet and lifestyle. I couldn't agree more with that. I'm so glad you brought up the methylation stuff, beaver buns. Sits in my ears. Yeah, this stuff all sounds great, but exactly as Elizabeth said, marketing and science often look the same on the surface, but they're not. And as people get older and they make more money, they have more interest in not dying. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of systems being set up to capitalize on that fear. Because fear is a very effective way to get someone to do something. It hijacks the brain, it activates the amygdala, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So if you can sell fear, you can create impulse purchases that are very expensive. And I think a lot of people fall for this stuff because they're wanting to get some kind of objective, quantifiable hope that they're not going to untimely demise, which is understandable. So one thing that I encourage people to do, and I think everyone has different opinions on this. I think the wearables and the tracking and data can be really cool for a lot of stuff. But I also don't think you need to track every metric of every hour of every day if you're a recreational athlete doing this as a hobby. I think that can lead to more neuroticism and anxiety than it solves. I think people sleep worse or they know they're tracking their sleep. I think everyone knows that. And so I think that you getting these data points can be really useful for a burst, for a period, to be like, okay, for a week I'm going to run all this stuff. Or if you're trying to solve something specifically, that's where this data can be really helpful. But I think people should be conscious of, just listening to their body and getting good, proper feedback on what they're doing and on these things. And if people are wanting to, as you get into whatever age and you're interested in longevity, there's a whole bunch of really useful evidence-based tests that you can do You know, I see people fretting all the time about, you know, what could my lipids mean? What does this lipid mean? Does this lipid panel mean I'm going to have a heart attack? Just get it scanned. You know, get scans done, get comprehensive blood work done, get a proper workup done. You'll be able to see if there's things going on just with things like scans, MRIs, blood work. You can find out something really, really early that you can treat and resolve before it becomes a huge problem. And, you know, one comment that I made in the speech I gave you last year was that you should check your blood work more often than you service your car. So I'm not a car expert, but we should probably get a minor service on that thing, like at least every 6 to 12 months. And I think the same should be said with your blood, is if you start measuring data now, if you start getting everything checked, and if you look for these things, there are ways that we can pick these things up, understand different mechanisms of aging that are evidence-based, that are affordable, that have been around a long time. They're not just these new gadget gizmos which cost thousands of dollars and don't have any peer-reviewed, evidence-based support.
I think when it comes to testosterone, you want to get the optimal benefits of testosterone, and testosterone will continue to become more optimal for you until you take too much. There's not a lot that's changed in injectable dosing for testosterone in the last few years. It puts most people in a ballpark, yeah, but it's not right. So the thing that blew me away at the Olympia, like I've been in an echo chamber for a long time of people who are